Thirsty, thirsty gamers.
That's way too formal. What do we do? I keep forgetting.
I'm assuming direct control. What the fuck is up, gamers? It's the Heroes Play Vibe Check podcast. I'm your host, Empress Quinn. I've got my co-host here, Cole. Tell the people what's up, Cole.
Hey, it's Cole. It's Christmas time, pretty soon anyway. And I am currently warm in my tiny apartment. My cats are happy, and the vibes are real. And I don't know how to open this podcast yet.
We did our absolute best. No one's gonna fault anybody here. Let's get right into these fucking vibe checks, eh?
Yeah, we got a few of them this week.
So for me, I've got Aklazad's Deepest Betrayal, who absolutely passes the vibe check. Once again, I'm on my 4 power commanders bullshit. That guy picks up the blade and is at 7 power, and he's, got lifelink, and the whole, game plan with that guy is, mono black control, so having a 3-hit clock in the command zone who also has lifelink to help you stabilize is gonna actually let you, close out the game, which is a thing that you need if you're going to put a card that says discard on it in the command zone for, your opponents. That's gonna draw some aggro. You gotta be able to back that up. So that works for me there. What you got for us, Cole?
I got a spread, but I'll just start off with one of them right now. So I was going through my terribly messy shelf of commanders, and I was thinking about all the mono white commanders that I got put together. We're gonna start with Owl the Dawn Sky. Definitely passes the vibe check. So Kamigawa had their, what I call dragon remixes for the spirit dragons. Mm-hmm. And Owl the Dawn Sky is pretty gross, in that it's got flying and vigilance, and, 5 mana, 5/4, pretty good, but, when you throw in a Hero's Blade, obviously going to 8 is also really good, but also when you're like, I'm going to sacrifice Owl the Dawn Sky so I can look at the top 7 cards of my library, grab any combination of permanents with a total mana value 4 or less into play, and then probably find some way to bring back Owl the Dawn Sky almost right away and put that Hero's Blade right back on top of it. So it's got ways to bring out Hero's Blade if it doesn't, if it wasn't already there. And, I have punched many people in the face with a Flying Vigilant Dragon and also made token copies of it, with, Mask of... Anyway, it's silly. That dragon is silly.
Helm of the Host.
Helm of the Host. That is in the deck. That's the thing that makes a bunch of dragons. Turns out, when your commander has Flying and Vigilance, people are like, ooh, I don't like that.
That card is, honestly, I did not anticipate how strong it was going to be, and then I saw it on the battlefield, and I'm just like, this is a flying 5/4 with vigilance. I'm never getting through this ever. What am I going to do here? And then it's just like, if you remove it, you're either buffing their whole team, or they're spitting a bunch of value onto the battlefield. Truly a pressing situation. Really strong design. A pretty big fan of it.
Very big fan. You have another commander.
So my horrible slug monstrosity, Toxtrol the Corrosive, does not pass the vibe check. That slug monster could not give a single fuck about picking up the Hero's Blade. absolutely could, but the plan there is to play blue-black fairies and control the game until I'm in a spot where I can slam Toxtrol and sort of like lock everybody out of creatures and finish the game out either with my like win conditions that are fairy-based, like Shadow Puppeteers, or the 3-hit clock that Toxtrol has naturally. So there's just like that killing intent in the command zone is what Toxtrol represents, and it's gonna do that regardless of whether or not it picks up the Hero's Blade. So we basically don't bother with the slot and we spend that on fairies and interaction instead.
Yeah. Passive malicious intent is what I'm getting from Toxtrol.
Yeah, exactly. I have the intent to kill you with that card. I'm not just going to sit here and control the game and then not be able to close it out. Like, there's a very clear clock here, and I want blood.
Yeah. I'll probably just skim the list down a little bit, because I think I did mention Audric Master Tactician previously. But I have, besides Audric, besides Al, I have Teshar, and I have Quende. Teshar and Quende both passed the vibe check for me, at least. They're both 4 mana, like 2/2s. Teshar has flying, so putting Hero's Blade out, putting Hero's Blade out, then Teshar out, making him a 5/4, pretty great. If anyone knows how Teshar works, and I have talked with Lenny about it. Very easy to just like weaponize Teshar with a bunch of like equipment, and just slap people while also reanimating like absolute value town stuff, and doing, artifact egg loop stuff. So if I'm not comboing out, I'm slapping people in the face for like, 10 here, 20 there. It's pretty easy. And Quende is a very similar boat. 4 mana 2/2 with double strike and gives first strike creatures double strike. And there's a lot of other legendary creatures in that deck, but Quende is like, yeah, we're turning sideways and we're just going 2-face. And some people are just not able to deal with that. I need to play that deck a little more often. I really want...
Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen that from you, so we'll have to get in a sesh with that.
Yes.
Yeah. I like to see it. People aren't really ready for an aggro deck that's just like, I'm coming for you right now.
I'm gonna go turn 1 first strike creature, turn 2 first strike creature, turn 3 first strike creature, turn 4 Quende, make all them double strike, go. And it's kind of crazy. It's basically it was like a Soldier Stompy Legacy deck that was kind of part of the inspiration, because they played all these first strike creatures. And they were running into like colorless Eldrazi decks in Legacy, and they would be like, all right, I'm swinging in a Reality Smasher, and they're like, cool, I'm going to block with my army of first strikers, and they're like, hold on a minute. I did not calculate this. And yeah, same thing applies here. Once you start getting first strike and double strike armies, everyone's like, now hold on a second here. And I really wanted to get a terminology. What are the cards with the numbers on them now?
Serialized?
Yeah, I wanted a serialized Quende. I don't care what number, but that was one of the cards that got serialized. I'm like, maybe one day, of all the cards, for whatever reason, I want one of Quende.
That would be a really good pickup for you.
Yeah. Do we want to move on to the news and get that out of the way?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, let's get into the news and then, like, right up at the top, talk about
some stuff. We can talk about Ravnica, period, at this point. It's a pretty easy topic. But let's start with the news first, and kind of move our way down the list here. So, a podcast is coming out that might make this segment completely null and void. So, the Herald's Horn is scheduled to start next year in January. The current cycle of hosts that we're expected to see here is MTG Cal, or Callahan, who was previously from Playing with Power, along with co-hosts Emma Partlow and Black Girl Mage, aka Lexi. It just looks like they're going to be talking about news in the community as things are happening. and they'll probably do it way more thoroughly than whatever we've been talking about so far. So I'm definitely looking forward to...
That's the focus for the whole show, obviously. But I like the way that they post online, and really love to see what they've got to say, so I'm excited to see that.
Adding it to the cycle of M2G podcasts I listen to on the regular, so yeah. New stuff in the future, looking forward to that. You entered this next one, so I'll let you take the reins there.
Yeah, we got Kristen Emily on Twitter at Narukami Knight, who posted her article about the equipment review of the year. So I wanted to maybe talk about our favorite knives of the year.
Let's Hero's Blade, obviously. This year's, in terms of like new equipment and stuff, has been surprisingly plentiful. Especially with like Lost Caverns of Ixalan had a few that I was pretty excited for and might kind of go towards the subject of another thing we're going to be talking about. But let's start off with what you have been pretty excited for this year.
I think my favorite knife to come out this year is Sword of Fortune Frontier. First off, big fan of the Sword of X and Y cycle. It's sort of a quest of mine to collect one of every entry in that cycle. So having the full cycle completed was really important and meaningful to me, and I'm sure a lot of Magic the Gathering players. But I also really like Sword of Fortune Frontier because it does a mechanic that's pretty close to my heart, which is Impulse Draw. It exiles the top 2 cards of your library, and then you can play those and an additional land this turn. So if you're hitting your land drops, then you've got ways to ramp in ways that weren't necessarily accessible to you. Like, I play this in a mono black deck, and I'm hitting extra land drops in that, and it's just like, you don't get that in mono black otherwise.
Yeah. Swords, the fact that they finally completed, it felt like forever, but they finally completed the sword cycle. And so good. And now they don't have to make any more, but they totally definitely should. Just saying. Now do tricolor swords. That's where the real power is.
Oh, you're wild.
Oh, we need to. Like, look, if Commander's getting faster, like, we need to make 4 mana swords that give protection for 3 colors and equip 3 and do bonker stuff.
That doesn't make any sense. What? Commander's getting faster, so I need more expensive
Yes, that is exactly how that works. Just trust me on this, okay?
The math ain't mathing, gamers.
The math is definitely mathing. Alright, so, Tarion Soul Cleaver is one of my picks. And I remember we did talk about it last episode, but like, I do think we're talking about another card that is kind of very similar because it was also in the vampire deck too, along with Blade of the Blood Chief, where if an artifact or creature is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1 counter on an equipped creature, it has Vigilance when it's equipped, and paying 1 mana to start and 2 mana to equip is just really good value. And we are in the Age of Treasures, so this thing just quickly pumps your creature up from pretty much literally anything. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, once again, I really appreciate a knife that makes you think, how bad do you really need the mana from that treasure?
Yeah, it's like, hey, how many treasures you got? I got 20. And maybe that's a treasure story for later we'll kind of quickly go over. One other one from the, at least that was from, yeah, that was main set. One other kind of small one that I'm keeping an eye on, and I'm looking to try out in a deck at some point, is Dire Flail. It is a 1 red mana equipment where the equipped creature gets +2/+0 with equip for 1. It has Craft with Artifact for 3 and 2 red. And how Craft works is you exile the Craft with Artifact card, and then another artifact or a card from your graveyard, and then you return it transformed. And it comes in as Dire Blunderbuss, with also equip 1. And the equipped creature gets +3/+0, and has whenever this creature attacks, you may sacrifice an artifact other than Dire Blunderbuss. And when you do, this creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature.
That sounds really strong.
Yeah. Hey, pay 1, already get +3. I don't know. What are you putting in it? 1, 2, 3. All right, so you sacrifice a rando artifact, deal 6 damage to something, just for attacking. Like I like Inferno Titan, so I like doing things that do that but better. So I'm keeping
something that you can like feed your power stones to.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just one of those things where, you know, I mean, have you heard of scrap tokens? You know, that's what you put your you shove your scrap tokens in this blunderbuss and just blow someone's commander out of the water. Yeah, big fan of this. Definitely will be trying to like slot it in somewhere. It's probably going to go in like my baby Mishra mono red artifacts list. What do you got anything else from this year?
I think that's been my favorite. The other one that I was going to bring up was Tarian Soul Cleaver, but we were of one mind on that.
We are in agreement.
We're all covered there. Yeah, just a really good knife this year. Thank you so much for printing that.
Big fans. So going back to the Herald's Horn for a second, Cal is a writer for TCG Player. And he put out an article, I believe, today about the top 5 reprints from Ravnica Remastered, which is coming out in January. Obviously, as with any type of like masters or remastered set, there's going to be a bit of contention about price point and availability. Unsurprisingly, spoiler alert, Shocklands were the top of that list. And appropriately so. Considering it's Ravnica, and it seems they've made the decision to not put Shocklands in the Murder at Karlov Manor set, which is kind of interesting, but kind of not unexpected, but it's, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't have any opinions about that one.
I don't know.
I do like the new art that they've got.
Yeah, the new art's always great. I'm definitely looking to get some Shocklands just for some regular decks, but also I'm finally looking to unproxy the Shocklands in the Killer Queen battle box, and kind of just finish. I got about like 15 cards or so left until I'm finally fully unproxied it, and I'm
nice.
So and it's at I feel like it's at a really good position to. It's had some fun games. I'll talk about it later. But yeah, big. Oh, and they're also printing Shocklands in the Clue crossover set packs. I don't know the full
I think
deal.
It's a board game thing that comes with a exclusive like pack, kind of like those precons that come with the sample collector booster. I think it's that kind of situation.
Okay. We'll get back to you on that, everyone, but
yeah, more research required.
It's still a little bit early, and we haven't seen everything yet. But on one hand, it is kind of cool to see what they're doing with a Clue crossover thing. Having all the characters from Clue show up in Magic artwork, and people are like, "Oh no, but someone's dropped a rank for." Captain Mustard, who's a sick card, by the way. Looking forward to that. But yeah, you know, just more sets coming out, more reasons to complain or get excited. Maybe both sometimes is appropriate too.
I'm only gonna get excited, none of the complaining.
Yeah. I'm all for it. I'm locked in. Let's do it. Now, that being said, let's kind of continue on, because as hilariously, part of the preview cards for Ravnica Remastered, which are all available online. They had the preview stream earlier this week, so they were like, and now previews are out. Go check it out. One of them, it was Karn, the Great Creator, which was banned in Pioneer, as part of the banned and restricted announcement that occurred on December 4th. So Karn got banned in Pioneer along with Geological Appraiser preemptively, or kind of not even really preemptively. It's been like a couple weeks since Lost Caverns came out, but as it turns out, Discover's kind of broken.
Yeah, people had a little bit of time with their hands on it and figured out how to cast, I think, just like that into a bunch of other free spells and some dinosaurs and then a haste enabler, and then it's GG's from turn 3 off casting like one card or whatever. It's pretty strong.
Pretty good. And then as part of it's hard to say if it was like a equivalent exchange or something, Smuggler's Copter was unbanned in Pioneer. Which
people are balling out with their battle buses now. They're just
they're like, yes, where we dropping, boys? Let's do it.
It's time.
Enjoy smuggling some copters again, which I find really funny. In that, like years ago in Standard, they were like, "Smuggler's Copter's too good, let's ban it." And now in Pioneer, they're like, "I guess maybe we can let it loose one more time," which is really funny. And then in Modern,
I'm interested to see the decks that are going to come out of that.
They just need to do they just need to do mass unbannings in like Modern. But we'll talk about that. Well, that's not really our subject. That's for other people to say. But hey, speaking of Modern bannings, Fury is finally banned. As a lot of people were getting scammed by Rakdos.
Yeah, your creature decks are back on the menu.
And Up the Beanstalk was also banned as part of the announcement. Funny story, and that'll be, again, like, we'll go back to it later when we're talking about what's been going on with our weeks in the games. I finally touched base with some friends, and we played a game last weekend, or a couple weekends ago, and my buddy was like, we're talking about bannings and all this other stuff, and my buddy's like, I have a Fury, and this was the Friday before the banning announcement. And at the time, the Fury was like 40 some odd Canadian, I think, or give or take. Yeah. And we were both like, me and my other friend were like, yo, you gotta get like rid of that like tomorrow. Like, you gotta get rid of it. And sure enough, the banning...
If you're not playing it, then yeah, definitely want to sell that before it gets banned and the prices go way down.
And unfortunately, as expected, I think the initial look online, I could tell like the price was slashed in half. So it was like, well, it looks like you missed it. But yeah, don't really know how much that's going to really shake up Modern. It'll be interesting to kind of just like glance over, and be like, hey, what's going on? And people will be like, Grief is still here. And we're like, okay, well, nothing's changed. But, you can at least maybe start playing some one drops. But I guess Orcish Bowmasters still exists, so don't get too comfortable.
Yeah. 60 card girlies, weigh in. Let me know what's going on.
Yeah, I'm curious. And kind
the
of...
The other thing is, you can still play Fury in EDH. I've got a commander for you called Henzi, Toolbox Torre.
Oh, get out of here.
It's basically Jund, but like Rakdos scam. So you can play all of your Evoke Elementals and your Feign Deaths and Not Dead After Alls, and you can cast your guys for the Blitz cost and then draw a card when they die, and then return them to the battlefield and buy the ETB effect again. I'm telling you, if you like that card and it's banned in that format, come to the format where we cast design mistakes at each other, so I'm told.
It's kind of, yeah, we're at ground zero in Elder Dragon Highlander, where you can kind of just do that. I guess one last thing before we swing into some other Karlov Manor previews. Swift Spear. What's the full name?
Monastery Swift Spear.
Monastery Swift Spear. Was banned in Pauper, unsurprisingly, ever since every time it feels like they release a new card into a format via downshift or supplemental set or master set or whatever, and then they give it like 3 to 6 months of like free reign before they're like, okay, now we got to take it out back and shoot it. Like, this is we've had our fun.
Yeah, you got to see how it actually works in the format, and sometimes Swift Spear goes ham and has to be removed, and we salute her. Too strong.
Still good in Modern, but not unfortunately had her time in Pauper. So. New Rakdos and new Aurelia from Murder in Karlov Manor.
Yeah. What the fuck is up, gamers? Cool cards.
Listen, let's quickly like get past the fact that Aurelia is threatening guild war on Ravnica. No one cares about that. Aurelia, the law above, and let me just see here.
Rakdos, patron of chaos.
Yeah. So Aurelia is a 5-mana 4/4 angel, so 3, 1 red, 1 white, with flying, vigilance, and haste. So already a Bloodrick card. Whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card. And whenever a player attacks with 5 or more creatures, Aurelia the Law Above deals 3 damage to each of your opponents and you gain 3 life. So hey, I love lightning helixing all of my opponents. That seems great.
Yes, lightning helix, clap, 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 clap.
I'm an easy sell on this. So and this also super duper fits in Ishin Two Heavens is 1 because it just says whenever a player attacks, and Ishin says yes, go, 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 draws 2 cards off 3, double lightning helixes on 5. Love it, love it, love it. Super cool design.
I think an important note there is it also says a player, so you can force the issue by playing Disrupt Decorums and other goat effects and be like, I'm going to farm these triggers off of every combat, not just mine.
Why would you give me that idea? I love it. I absolutely love it. I am going to...
I'm a sicko and I love goat.
Yeah, goat is pretty good. There's never not a bad time. I mean, there's probably some technically, like, bad times, but, most of the time.
Taunt from the Ramparts.
Taunt from the Ramparts is just a sick fucking card every time.
You can't block, everybody's going into the red zone, and I'm getting the burn and the life gain and drawing cards. Like, bruh.
Yeah, very cool. Love it. I luckily have 2 copies. I'm hoping to get some more for some other decks, but always been very pleasantly surprised to see what that card does. But hey, we also have Rakdos, Patron of Chaos. Take it away.
Yeah, Rakdos, Patron of Chaos for 4 generic, black and a red, for a legendary creature demon, 6/6 with flying and trample, and at the beginning of your end step, target opponent may sacrifice 2 non-land, non-token permanents. If they don't, you draw 2 cards. So it's just another card in the long and storied tradition of Rakdos pressure cards. And I get to just really put the pressure on you and make you make some bad decisions. You'll have to choose between permanence of value or giving me card advantage. And you're not going to want to give me card advantage because I'm just drawing more things that are just like going to put more pressure on you. Here's a Painful Quandary. Let's think about that. Here's an Underworld Dreams. It'll make some more considerations for you. And I've got the life gain turned off with my Tybalt, a Rakish Instigator. So it's just like, I'm just going to keep drawing cards like this. You really don't want me to have those cards in my hand. Oh, but you don't want to sacrifice 2 non-land, non-token permanents either? Well,
yeah, the non-token permanents part is also the thing that I'm like, wow, this thing is like, it is not a super duper powerful card, because if it was like every end step or something like that, I'd be like, yo, this is wild. But specifically the non-land, non-token part is pretty cool to see. You're like, no, you will not just sack 2 treasures or clues or food or whatever. You will have to make a decision for my amusement.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put like trigger doublers and stuff in there because that does just target 1 opponent, and I would like to point that at each of my opponents. I think that would be very cool and satisfying for me. So I'll have to put in a bit of work to make the trigger work that way.
I already had someone I know comment, they're like, I'm gonna have to put Rakdos in my Rakdos deck, and they're like, yeah, so you're gonna have to put Rakdos in your Rakdos deck. It's just Rakdos all the way down. It's just Rakdos all the way down. Now, as part of the preview for these 2, we have standard kind of alternate art that is part of the Ravnica showcase frame for both of them.
Sort of like design with the cityscape on the borders and the like flattened art and like that one, but there's another showcase frame.
Yep. This is as part of the murder mystery theme. It looks like they're going to have these sort of like case file frames, which with like typewriter font.
These are pretty polarizing, so I'm hearing. Tell me about your opinions.
I absolutely fucking adore these. I think they're super stylish. I like how, as part of like the templating, that there's this slight tilt to like because it's like, all right, so here's this photo of this individual.
Yeah, it's like the photo's actually like on the document that they're showing you, like paper clipped onto the side there, like a real like detective folder or dossier. I think that's the word.
Yeah, it's like a dossier. One of those guys. But yeah, there's a lot of style that went into this that I personally am a super big fan of. And there will be God, what do they call? People are jokingly calling them like the blacklight version. Which will have like hidden writing, or like, you know, when like you have like pen or pencil marks on a stack of paper and the underneath has like the faint traces of what you wrote. So that stuff will be showing up on like the special foil versions of it.
They showed an example with the blue-white new detective guy whose hidden ink points out how handsome and cool he is. It's very funny.
I think everyone can, fortunately or unfortunately, agree that he is kind of cool. So, you know, he gets a pass. But yeah, I'm a big fan. A lot of people are vocally not a fan of it, sometimes due to like visual comprehension of not being able to tell like what color the permanent is. Which on one hand, I understand, but two, I don't care. It's kind of like the black and white lands from Crimson Vow and Midnight Hunt. I'm a big fan of those lands stylistically, but again, it's a visual comprehension issue for some people. They're like, I don't know if you're tapping your basics properly, and I'm like, skill issue, tap my lands, play my spell. But I only have like 2 decks that use those basics, so I don't know. We'll see what they actually look like. I usually find whenever we have digital previews of cards, they're too crisp, and you can't really quite tell what they're going to look like when they're actually in play.
Yeah, I do think there's something to be said for seeing a card in person and using that to make your judgment on like what the card actually looks like and how you feel about it. So, I'm gonna wait and see. Personally, I think the dossier look is pretty neat. I think I like the Ravnica style showcase better, though, with the city on the sides. I think that just like, I think they introduced that in one of the March of the Machine sets, either that or Aftermath. But all of the Ravnica legends in that, like Judith looks fucking incredible. And
yeah, Judith looks great. Judith looks great.
Getting to put all of my Ravnica legends in that matching Ravnica frame will be very cute.
But again, also, like, on top of it, just more stylistic ways to show off a legendary creature or your preferred cards. And depending on how available they are, they could also be really cheap, which is something I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, that's true. They've really made, like, fashion pretty cheap to get your hands on.
You know, pick your poison, pick your style. Ready to move on about our favorite cards. I know you put down that you wanted from each set, and I'm like, it's a little bit much. I just have some favorite cards in general. Because as we take a look at 2023, here's what it looks like. So we had Dominaria Remastered, so we were really like factor that in. Phyrexia All Will Be One. March of the Machine, followed immediately by Aftermath. The first part of Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth, Wilds of Eldraine, the Doctor Who stuff, the second half of the Lord of the Rings holiday release, which is kind of weird, and that, but some has some cool cards in there. Lost Caverns of Ixalan, and I'm trying to skip over
all of the commander sets in between those.
Yeah, like if it's appropriate involved, it's there. I usually kind of consider them like the 0.5 add-on to that set. So yeah.
Yeah, so I sat down and selected my favorite card from each of those sets.
Then you go first.
All right, so from Lost Caverns Commander, it's Don Andres the Renegade. I really like the Grixis Theft archetype. They gave me a commander who fits that perfectly, and we get to really dig into that. From Lost Caverns main set, gotta be my mono black control win condition, Aklazot's Deepest Betrayal. Really like that gave me a way to dig into the archetype of discard and explore that thing that's like a pretty heavy part of mono black's color identity that you don't see played too much. So I think that is a way to play that and not have it be totally miserable. From Doctor Who, it's definitely going to be TARDIS. I love that blue box.
I can't wait to blow it up again.
Extremely emotionally attached to it, so if you blow it up, I will make it my mission to reduce your life total to 0, even at the expense of my board state and life total. I'm that committed. From Wilds of Eldraine Commander, it's gotta be Shadow Puppeteers, giving fairies a win condition based in combat that's not just like, I have 5 lords and you're dead now, is pretty cool. And it like feeds into the like fey trickery, like my little 1/1s are now 4/4 dragons in combat, and it's very sick as fuck and satisfying. Also, it's got ward, so it's just like, here's my big threat, and you have to pay extra.
And you have to deal with it. Are you going to? Are you willing to pay the cost? You're like, fine, I'll pay it.
Mm-hmm. From Wilds of Eldraine main set, gotta be Restless Cottage. It is the perfect blend of Grave Hate and a body that matters, and the activation cost is tolerable, and it makes a food token. It's got everything. I love it. That's the
creature line, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. That cycle for Eldraine and Ixalan are pretty good. Overall.
I really also want to try a Restless Reef that turns into a shark with Death Touch and mills target player on attack. I think that has a home in my Captain Nagathrod deck. Moving on to Lord of the Rings Commander, I think my favorite card from that set is going to be Call Forth the Tempest. It's just a fuck huge sorcery that says Cascade, Cascade, and then it burns your opponent's creatures for the mana value of other spells you've cast this turn. So if you're deep into a storm turn and then you cast that and then you get 2 free spells, it's basically a one-sided board wipe. You got a bunch of free value. You can usually clean up from there. From Lord of the Rings main set, gotta be Sauron the Dark Lord. I love that powerful, inevitable force of evil. I love that it's the perfect marriage of the ring tempts you and the Grixis archetype, and I get to play all of those cool cards under one just sick as fuck legend. Such a fan. And the showcase art with the Dominic Mayer and Anato Finstark, that piece absolutely slaps. From Commander Masters, gotta be Jai's Phoenix. Shout out to Phoenixes.
Yeah, it was like, oh, hey, Phoenixes, get in there.
Yeah, they are very slowly making those better as a creature type, and Jai's Phoenix in particular is good for my Mardu Phoenixes deck, because one of my commanders is Yeska Thrice Reborn, who is a Planeswalker, and that copies Planeswalker abilities, so love to see it. The March of the Machines, or Machine Singular, Hoarding Broodlord, I love that dragon. It enters the battlefield, grabs a thing from your library, and tucks it away in exile, and then you can cast spells from exile with Convoke. So if you're into the Impulse Draw Cast from Exile archetype, the Convoke on that, you can like make a bunch of tokens with Boros Pia, and use those to cast spells. Like it, we love to see it. From Machine's Commander, tie here between Rowan's Talent or Uncivil Unrest. Both of those have pretty strong signals of killing intent, with Rowan's Talent copying the tripled damage activation of Yeska Thrice Reborn in my Mardu Phoenix's deck, and Uncivil Unrest putting +1/+1 counters on Sauron the Dark Lord in that deck for me, and tripling the damage on my 7 power commander, and we already know how important that number is. In Aftermath, I don't actually play a whole lot of cards from this.
I mean, it's a pretty small pool of cards anyway, so I could totally... I mean, a lot of people, like, have no idea what that set is.
Yeah, I do see a lot of Samut Vizier of Noctamun played, And I think that card is so cool for the just like Gruul go 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 archetype, where as long as your guys entered the battlefield this turn, when they deal combat damage, you draw a card. And that just lets you, like, it tells you exactly what you need to be doing. You need to be playing fast creatures, and you need to play them every turn, and you need to turn them sideways, and we'll keep giving you creatures to do that with, and you snowball into a victory from there. I think it's really cool design, and I like to see it played. Moving to All Will Be One Commander, it's Othari Sun's Glory. Shout out to another real one. Phoenix.
Yeah, I'm just gonna jump in here real quick and say that one is probably my choice. Just because of how it's just so good. It's kind of stupidly
so perfect.
good.
You're not going to ever remove it meaningfully. The board state is going to be bananas every combat, and if you get extra combats, bro, woe betide.
And then also like hilariously synergistic with rebels in the past because of the last ability paying to red and white. And tapping an untapped rebel you control to bring it back. So you don't have to solely rely on the rebel tokens. You could also have your little rebel typal deck with Othari at the helm and be like, oh no, my tokens are gone, play this rebel, bring her back. Let's go.
Yeah, she's so cool. Very cool card. Thank you so much, Wizards, for printing that. Also, the art is incredible. That
it's really evocative.
Free. I love to see it. Last one here, gonna be Prologue to Phyresis from All Will Be One main set. I think that basically opened up a new archetype of Proliferate Burn, and I play that in a couple of places, one being Historic on Arena, and the other one being Blue-Red Poison Tempo in Oathbreaker with Rowan, and then Prologue to Phyresis as my signature spell. Getting to experience that in a way that's not just like little guys with infect or little guys with toxic or like all of that, just like a completely different way to share with my friends the ecstasy of Phyrexia was a very nice experience.
It's kind of neat how, like, on one hand there's a lot of people who think because of the focus on poison that we should finally like increase the amount in Commander, which I don't really agree with, because you really do have to invest heavily in
I think if you think that number should be increased, you need to play Infect.
Yeah, it is hard mode all of its own, and definitely would not want that number to be higher or lower. 10's a good number, and that the fact that they made it that efficient of a card at that mana value, because it's like 2 mana, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Each of your opponents get a poison counter, draw a card. There's a couple of other similar pieces in, I think All Will Be One Commander, the like Infectious Inquiry, that's like 3 mana. Each opponent gets a poison counter, and you draw some cards for black. I like that one as well, but Prologue to Phyresis goes in more places for me, so that ended up being my favorite over it.
Yeah.
Well, that's my list. What you got for me, Cole?
Okay, I think I can come close to how many sets that came out this year. And let me just take a quick glance here. So, starting off with All Will Be One, this card's going to be a little bit odd. Or against all odds, heyo. So it's a 3 mana, a 3 colorless 1 white sorcery where you choose one or both modes. You get to exile target artifact or creature you control and then return it to the battlefield, so you flicker it. And the other mode is return target artifact or creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's got super cool artwork, and it's kind of just one of those cards that really fit well in my Bloodrick deck, but I also just think for that value and cost and those effects, especially for like, you still have a partial reanimation effect at least baseline, and I found more and more that flickering even artifacts right now has been pretty good, because we'd be getting some really cool ones with sick ETBs, and kind of to tie into that, we're gonna just jump all the way ahead to Lost Caverns, Brass's Tunnel Grinder.
Yes, great card.
2 and a red, legendary artifact. When it ETBs, you discard any number of cards, then draw that many, +1. And then, if at the beginning of your end step, if you've descended this turn, aka a permanent has been put into your graveyard from anywhere, you put a bore counter on the tunnel grinder, and then if there are 3 or more, you transform it, and you remove those counters, and it becomes Tekutalon the Searing Rift, which is a cave land. You can tap it for red, and then whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced by this land, you discover X, where X is that spell's mana value. But honestly, the front face alone has been pretty great. And the fact, again, it kind of synergizes with Against All Odds, where you're able to flicker Brass's Tunnel Grinder. You're like, no, I don't want to flip it. I just want to keep using it to just keep digging. So you can do that by flickering it. So there was a lot of cards in Lost Caverns that I'm a big fan of, but I won't go over them. For March of the Machine, it's got to be my boy Urabrask.
Yes.
Urabrask / The Great Work. I thought that was a pretty sweet finale for all those, for all the Praetors. But this is kind of, for some people, like, you do agree, is like the best version of Urabrask yet, and as hilariously is also the one that kind of stands out a lot more against his previous 2 versions, because he suddenly shifts from like this weird, like, my opponents do one thing, but I get like the benefit as like the trade-off. Now it's just like, all right, I'm spell slinging, I'm dealing damage, I'm adding mana to my mana pool for each as a sorcery, and then
that's sort of the design of that cycle of Praetors. Like, both of the first 2 cycles of Praetors was the I get a benefit and you get ruined, and then the last cycle is sort of like the encapsulation of what white mana means on that plane, or black mana or whatever, and then a saga for maybe what that means to the Phyrexians. So the Great Work and Urabrask doing the just like storm and go and really like rewarding that like passion and that casting of spells. It's what like red mana on Phyrexia is about. Yeah, and
obviously a lot of people are very focused on the front side because it is super combo-tastic, and that's definitely one way you can win the game if you have like infinite storm counts of just killing all your opponents, which is all fine and dandy, and I've done that with my Urabrask deck. But the Great Work, the backside is actually surprisingly strong. Even if you don't try to proliferate the counters on it. So dealing 3 damage to your opponents and then that much damage to each of their creatures. Great. Then making 3 treasure tokens, and then getting to the last mode, giving all all instant sorceries in graveyards flashback that you can cast, and then bringing Urabrask back. Super duper cool. Love it. I've done that a few times where I'm like, hey, that thing seems really great right now. I'm going to take that. So don't sleep on the Great Work, because this is pretty great.
I just want it noted for the record that all of Urabrask's versions have been good, and even though the third one is most popular, I think they wasn't riding with you from day one like I was, Urabrask. Don't forget that.
I'm a big fan, so I agree. March of the Machine Commander, Hedron Detonator is my choice. 2 in a red. You'll find that a lot of the options are red. 2 in a red for a 2/3 Goblin Artificer. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, the detonator deals 1 damage to target opponent. So we don't have the same power as Reckless Firewaver. Or Ingenious Arterialist, where they're able to deal X damage equal to the number of artifacts entering simultaneously to each opponent. And how they do that is slightly different to rules-wise, no big deal. But I do like the targeted damage. And then you can also tap it to sacrifice 2 artifacts to exile the top card of your library, and you can play it this turn. So I just think it's just a neat little package that kind of just like, I don't know, just does the job, does what I need in quite a few decks, actually.
Yeah, I agree. I put that in a deck so that I wouldn't have to get a real Reckless Fireweaver for the deck to like replace a printer proxy. And it's performed exactly the way that I expected the Reckless Fireweaver to, so I'm satisfied. And it's got the built-in card draw, so yeah, I like it. Sign off.
going into right into March of the Machine, the Aftermath, because that was actually the one thing that I paid attention to, because I'm like, all right, I'm not going to be getting any of the previous Planeswalkers except for like a Nahiri. But speaking of Nahiri, Nahiri's Resolve is my choice from that set. Banger enchantment, 3 red and a white. Creatures you control get +1/+1 have haste. Great. At the beginning of your end step, exile any number of non-token artifacts and or creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of your next upkeep. Which, yes, you get to turn some things off, but you basically get to you just get to reset some stuff that needs to be reset, protect the things that need to be protected, like your Hedron detonators and your Reckless Fire Weavers and stuff.
And your Brass's Tunnel Grinders.
And your Brass's Tunnel Grinders, yeah. And the other cool thing, too, is that even though people are like, we gotta get rid of the Nahiri's Resolve, so we lock those in exile. It's like, no, those cards just gain the effect to return on the upkeep, so even if you get rid of the Resolve, they're still coming back.
You do still need to blow up the Resolve, though, because
you
that's
do.
a
You do
fucking
need
card
to.
advantage for you. You're like tapping all of your creatures anyway, so you don't care about blockers, so you're just like, cool, exile them all. They're safe from board wipes, and I reset their ETBs. Like, shut that down.
It's good. It's good. I will shut out for another card in the Aftermath. Campus Renovation, same mana value as a sorcery. Return up to 1 target artifact or enchantment card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exile up to 2 cards from the top of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. So it's just kind of one of those like really cool, efficient spells for 5 mana. There's like partial reanimation. You can get your artifact creatures or whatever, and then you also get to impulse for 2 and get ready for the next round. So really neat spell. Take a look at take a look at Aftermath. We're already coming past. Those packs suck, but the cards in it are pretty cool. Moving on to the first part of Lord of the Rings. Base set wise, I'm going to also be an evil villain and choose Sauron the Lidless Eye, which was the card as part of the kind of like intro constructed decks. 3 red and a black, 4/4. I'm trying to steal your stuff, all right? And I'm going to try to weaponize it, or I'm going to get rid of it, because that's how I built my deck. But this Sauron is just basically your legendary impulse effect, or not impulse, not arrest.
All right, it's threatened.
It's threatened. Yeah, there we go. And then the fact that it has Trumpet Blast plus tacked on as the second effect, where you play 1 red black to get +2/+0 on all your creatures, and then each of your opponents lose 2 life. Adds up real quick.
That ability is sneaky powerful. First off, +2/+0 to the team is fucking ridiculous, but also doing burn damage on top of that, so you can, if you're a sicko and make infinite mana, you don't even have to go to combat. You can just push that button and burn them out. Wild.
Yeah, real good. So, even a few people have agreed that they are not, that they're not sleeping on it, and I appreciate you respecting it. But yeah, super cool. Love this card. Looking at Wilds of Eldraine, this one was a little tricky. What part of Wilds of Eldraine? I had a list. It was here, I swear. That one, yeah, that set was a little more subdued for me. Oh, no, who am I kidding? Heartflame Duelist. You get your 1 white, 1 colorless, 3/1 Human Knight, where it says instant sorcery spells you control have lifelink, but then having the adventure Heartflame Slash, where it deals 3 damage to any target for instant speed. Yeah, I just like the fact. I wish this was legendary, but we take what we can get when you can give your instant sorceries lifelink. I love gaining life.
Yeah, the people are always trying to have one of those things that says your instants and sorceries have lifelink in the command zone. And I think we did that once with Firesong and Sunspeaker. but I don't know. That hasn't caught on for some reason.
They're 6 mana. I mean, I know you could play your high mana commanders, but like they're just not efficient for that value. We need to get to 2 to 3 mana. We gotta up the clock a little bit here.
Cole's over here like, I'm a Boros mage. My Boros commander should cost 1 red white.
Yeah, I want hybrid mana. All right, just make it literally 1 mana. I'm crazy. It's crazy. All right, so we're going to talk about Doctor Who a little bit. I know some people aren't going to be a big fan of that. Big fan of 500-Year Diary. So if you're a Clue player in blue, you want to get this. 3 in a blue for a legendary artifact Clue. It enters the battlefield tapped, but you can tap it to add blue for each Clue you control, and then you can pay 2 at any time to sacrifice it to draw a card. So you are this is your mana rock for Clue tokens, and I just think it's, even if you just happen to make a handful at a time, it's great. If you're a dedicated Clue deck, it's fantastic. Don't sleep on the set because there's a lot of cool sleeper cards in here.
There's a bunch of support for Clue tokens. You can make a very cool, just exclusively Clues-related deck from the cards from that set, and you would have a very cool and fun time.
Yeah. Next one here, what do we got? The second half of Lord of the Rings, which is its own distinct thing, I promise. Trust me, though. Because they did the art panorama thing for some of the sets.
Yeah, the set symbol for that is the same. It's LTC, so it's still technically part of Lord of the Rings Commander, but yeah, they came in those scene bundles, I think they are marketed as. Yeah.
It's a toss-up, but let's be real here. It's Tom from the Rampart, but also maybe Nazgul Battle Mace, or Lauren's Searing Light. I mean, it's such a cool spell.
I so want to cast a Lauren's Searing Light. I have that card on my desk here, and I just don't know where to put it.
But yeah, each opponent exiles a creature.
It's the War Doctor. I need to put it in the War Doctor.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. War Doctor. There we go. We figured it out. All right, so yeah, 4 mana instant. Each opponent exiles a creature with the greatest power among creatures that player controls. And then if you have Spell Mastery, deals damage to each opponent equal to the power of the creature they exiled. Awesome. Super cool. Love it. Very easy to get Spell Mastery too.
Have you cast that yet?
No, I have not yet. I do intend to cast it ASAP. And yeah, I think, because I bounced ahead to the Tunnel Grinder. So yeah, those are my picks for the year. I didn't think I had them, but turns out most of them are in Bloodrick. So easy clap. Figured it out.
Nice. All right. Do you want to talk about some recent games?
Yeah, you go first. Mine are plentiful.
All right. So, for starters, like I mentioned at the top of the show, built and played Aklazot's Deepest Betrayal. I really wanted to see what was up with that Bat God. I've been sort of frothing at the mouth for that since they gave me Argwell's Bloodfast and showed me that a Bat God exists. And I was like, I would like to see the Bat God then. And then they finally showed him to me, and he's a mono-black discard commander. So I was like, all right, well, I don't have a whole lot of experience with that archetype, but it's part of Black's color identity, so it's in the game for a reason. I guess we'll see what's up with it, explore that archetype a bit. It's fine. It's fun. Aklazot's in the command zone is a really good way to close the game out. And you can put the pressure on early with your little burglar rats, and you can include your waste knots and your Megrims and Liliana's Caresses to really make all of the discarding that you're doing mattering. I didn't put it in the deck, but I do think something like Oppression or Painful Quandary would probably be a good idea. Mm-hmm. And Aklazot's, when he attacks, he makes your opponents discard a card. If they discard a land at any point, you make a bat token. And on that attack trigger, if they don't have any cards in hand, if they're unable to discard, then you draw a card. So it's even when you've gotten to a point where you've stripped all of their hands of resources, you're not out of things to do. You draw cards, and you get to keep furthering on your game plan like that. And I think that part right there really is what makes it an effective control win condition. Because then you're just like, you're in this position where I'm continually stripping you of resources. You can't really remove this effectively because he's going to become a land. And then your hand is empty at that point, so I'm just going to push the button and make him back into a creature. And we're back at it. And he has lifelink, so anytime I hit you, I'm gaining life and stabilizing. Yeah. So you get to just like, you play that control with killing intent like I'm about.
Yeah, and I guess in that case, like when I take a look at a card like that, compared to the other contemporaries, it feels like you can have a good balance of resiliency in the fact that you could become a land, but then you can also like, I don't know, the game plan is not just I'm gonna make you discard all of your cards and then I take them. Or something like that. Like, you're just like, no, I just want some bats. I want to turn creatures sideways. No big deal.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn guys sideways. I'm going to make you really think about your options or potentially remove all of your options from you. And I do have tiny bones in the deck, so when you are completely empty-handed, I can just push that button and burn you for 10, burn you for 10, burn you for 10, game over.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's all you need. Yeah, definitely not the most, like, offensive version of, like, discard strategies.
Mm-hmm. So I played 2 games with that. I don't think either time won, but I impacted the game meaningfully and wasn't from the outset the threat because I was playing discard inherently. It was because I'd landed a card like Haunt of Hightower, which, I don't know if you've read that recently, gamers, but maybe go back and read Haunt of Hightower again. That card is strong, like really strong.
I got one hanging out in my collection. But yeah, the fact that it also has flying and lifelink as it's growing, pretty gross.
Yeah, that's another one of those control win conditions, basically. So Haunt of Hightower, 4 black, flying, lifelink. Whenever it attacks, defending player discards a card. Whenever a card is put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1 counter on the Haunt of Hightower. So a really strong play that I was able to do in this deck was swing with the Haunt of Hightower, make somebody discard, you put a counter on it. Then they make a block that they think is good. And I had Sir Conrad the Grim on the battlefield, so I just pushed the Sir Conrad button twice and put 8 +1/+1 counters on the Haunt of Hightower, or I guess 6 because opponent's graveyards. 6 +1/+1 counters on the Haunt of Hightower, and suddenly that block that they think is good is no longer good. Really good card, strong include in the deck.
But you had fun.
Yeah, had a good time. Tell me about a game you played, Cole.
It was actually a game I didn't play but observed, as I went out to the office building gathering of magic with a friend, like friends of friends that I was introduced to recently, and I'm like, hey, there's 5 of us, that can make some games awkward. How about we have 2 people who have played and the 2 people who haven't played Killer Queen? Can you please play it for my amusement as I observe and learn and figure things out? And again, seems people have had a really good time with it. As one of the changes that I did this time around was that I had everyone have a nomad outpost in their command zone along with Queen Martissa to help smooth their plays. But then there was also the realization that no one is going to be playing a Nomad Outpost turn 1 because they're still having a full grip of 7 at the beginning of the game, which means it would be a discard. Which also made everyone be like, but how would I use that to my advantage first thing? And then I'm like, okay, maybe I should have thought about that before I just willy-nilly put that in there. But, and then...
interesting.
And then, because of I did the 2.1 update with it, a lot of the new Ixalan cards that were put in there, got used. Surveil was used a lot. And a lot of people were trying to find ways to 2-for-1 opponents and then use a reanimator spell on whatever they just killed. So there was a lot of the graveyard was constantly being looked back and passed between players to be like, hey, can I take a look so I know what's in there? Like, I gotta keep track of my Dragon's Rage Channeler Delirium count, and I gotta see if I can cast this spell from the graveyard, or I gotta be sure if I can cast Shreds of Sanity and bring back what I want, or whatever, right? So there's a lot of player interaction. There was still some level of like your typical Commander game of politics where people were trying to weigh the pros and cons of doing certain actions and seeing if people like to partake. And one of them is a judge, and he really loves spinning knobs. So he spun the most knobs of that game. Just doing all the cool stuff, he clearly was having a lot of fun. He's like, yeah, this is really cool. And he's like, I might deck us. And I'm like, huh? And he's like, yeah, very real chance. Just trust me on this. And sure enough, out of the 150, because after the change it was 154 cards, we were probably hitting about 30. And he was Reality Scrambled, which was a spell I recently added, so you get to tuck your own card into your library, and then you flip until you hit the same type. So he coveted jewels in the deck, so he took the coveted jewel back from someone, drew 3 cards, used it to cast Reality Scramble on it to put it back into the deck. And at some point, we realized that after all the mana rocks were out, that he was able to Reality Scramble his coveted jewel to bring it back out into play. And I'm like, oh, that's what you meant. So the general consensus is that it is in a good spot right now in terms of what effects are there. Like, gameplay is like, it's not super linear. Like, it was like a 2-hour game pretty much, because everyone was trying to do like these little things here and there. And the only feedback I really got was that maybe the life total needs to be adjusted. I initially had it at 20. People thought it was too low. I went up to 30. Some people thought that was a decent number. Someone's like, maybe go back down or go to 25, just so that we still have like a nice balance of spells versus time invested into this thing. So card-wise, I think the only thing I'm going to be adding in the near future, and that will be when I see another friend of mine later this week to play 1v1 Killer Queen, I'm going to be adding the cycle of creature lands to the mana base to add the other to the other cycle of creature lands already in the deck. So like Needle Spires and stuff's already in the deck. I'm just kind of hoping to be like, I wanted someone to like win with like a Needle Spires or like with one of the other lands and just be like, you fool, you wiped the board, but you did not see the Double Striker or whatever, stuff like that. So
that would be very funny.
We'll have to see what happens there. But yeah, super cool again to see people take a project that I've invested in so heavily and make something of it and do really cool stuff. I just saw like a lot of really cool plays. And I'm like, this is exactly what I want. Yes, dance for me.
Fuck yeah, dude. That's awesome. Here's my sicko mode suggestion for life totals. Leave it at 30, but put a descent into the Avernus in the command zone.
No, I can't do that. I can't justifiably do that yet. I think it is meant to be it is meant to be a Killer Queen. I say Killer Queen is like, I know it's the title, but I mean, you literally have a Killer Queen in the command zone that makes assassin tokens, and if you're the monarch, you get to draw cards. So the goal is to pass the crown around and use subterfuge and resources in your kingdom to get the crown back and win the game. So Descent, I get the appeal, but that would probably speed things up too fast, because like you go from 28 to 24 to 18 in like turn 0. Like I think we need to, we'll keep, I don't know, I'll try 25 and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that was a sicko mode suggestion, so you don't have to take
that was too sicko mode for me.
So here's what I also have been up to. I mentioned the War Doctor earlier, and that's because I took a look at that card again and was like, I should just put this in the command zone. I think that really big cannon potentially is very appealing, and I want to see what that will do if I build the whole deck about that. So I put the War Doctor and Clara Oswald in the command zone. I should probably read these cards for the gamers. Alright, so the War Doctor says whenever one or more other permanents phase out, and whenever one or more other cards are put into exile from anywhere, put a time counter on the War Doctor. And whenever the War Doctor attacks, it deals damage equal to the number of time counters on it to any target. If a creature dealt damage this way would die this turn, exile it instead. He's a 2, a red and a white legendary creature, Time Lord Doctor, 3/5. Dude is really strong, actually. The deck is a impulse draw / cascade aggro / burn deck. So I've got the Passionate Archaeologist and Tavern Brawler and Sword Coast Sailor backgrounds that will burn when I cast spells from exile. They'll impulse draw cards that'll put time counters on the Doctor as well as buff him with the effects of the background.
And then also make him unblockable for that one person with the highest life total.
Yeah, exactly. So I can guarantee I'm getting in for combat damage, and then because I've been exiling cards to effects like Impulse Draw, I've got the Chandra Fire Artisan in there to exile the top card of my library every turn. So we're really just like impulse drawing. We've got TARDIS in there to do Cascade. There's a couple of spells that will let me exile until I do a thing, like Day of the Doctor, that saga. So I think that one in particular is formatted specifically so that it will put a bunch of counters on
counters on the you know, like his face is on it, so I would certainly hope.
Because there's another saga that's almost exactly like it. An Unearthly Child, or The Unearthly Child, the one that shows the first episode of Doctor Who. It says reveal until you find one of the things that meets the requirements, whereas the War Doctor saga is exile until you find one of those, and functionally they're the same, but mechanically the War Doctor sees each one of those individual exiles and gets a bunch of time counters from that. So they really was just like, okay, we need to make this work for you extremely well, and it is one of the strongest cards in the deck for him. But the game plan is just like put a bunch of time counters on him and then go to combat. And I can use that giant cannon after I've been putting a bunch of time counters on him to just blap somebody out of the game. We have Clara Oswald in the command zone who doubles my triggers, so anytime I'm putting one time counter on him, I'm doing that twice. And then I go to combat and I do the attack trigger and blap twice. That number has gotten up to as much as 8 before people were like, all right, we can't have you resolving that again. We need to remove the War Doctor. So we do that.
All I just know is Lenny is like in the back of my brain just clapping and being like, yes, Clara Oswald is amazing, deal with it. And I know he's a big fan of doubling Doctor's effects. Pretty gross.
She's a really strong Magic the Gathering card, as it turns out. A lot of the Doctors really just like, I need this, but one other color, and Clara's like, hello, I would love to do that for you.
I got you,
also
fam.
Double your trigger.
Just, Doctor, dab me up. All right, let's go.
Yeah, she's truly a very good companion for him. So there's that. We've got one turn spell in the deck, the Twice Upon a Time, and that one fits because I put it into exile because it's an adventure, and then cast it from exile if I have 2 or more Doctors, and I take an extra turn and can use that to usually close the game out from there. It's been really cool and satisfying to play so far. The War Doctor, as I mentioned earlier, gets bigger than expected. I also put the new Quintorius in there, who's like an alternate win condition. If I'm storming off from exile, I can blap, blap, blap with his attack, or not attack, his, what is the word? Cast from exile trigger, the static ability, there we go. It deals 2 damage to my opponents and I gain 2 life. That really goes a long way to stabilizing. And I have Luxior, Giada's Gift, so that I can give that to the War Doctor and he gets +1/+1 for each of the time counters on him, in addition to any +1/+1 or whatever counters I might have put on him or other equipment. And all of that goes a long way to just like, I'm going to combat with my unblockable doctor. He's lopping your head off, and then the attack damage is going to burn somebody else for lethal.
The War Doctor is no joke. I'm surprised they templated in that way, like how Lelia is, but Wizards also sometimes is like, cool, ship it, it's flavorful, trust me.
I mean, they seem to like Lelia. I think she shows up in one of the cube events on Magic the Gathering.
Like,
online,
a lot, like, yeah.
This is a powerful card. We're really happy with the way that she turned out. She's also extremely fucking cool. And
yes, yeah, she is. She is really cool, yeah. Also, hey, another Boros legend that doesn't exactly do combat. It does combat stuff, but like,
no, it's a Boros combat commander, so it's still on that plate of clovers, and I'm eating up.
I'm eating them. Just give me the whole bowl. Amazing. In terms of other games I've had, I mentioned a group of people that we finally. It's been over 6 months since we last played, and we're purely an online group. Most of them are down in Texas, and the reason why like everyone kind of went radio silent from one another. One of them had a baby, so he was busy with his new baby and his toddler. And I was like, damn, did he die or something? He's like, no, man, I've been a dad. I'm like, cool. Another one of my friends is a VTuber. Go check out Junehawk. So he's been focused on that for his streaming. And then another one's just being a teacher. And then there's me just like doing whatever. And then, my buddy Brian was like, hey, I'm like, oh my God, you're live. He's like, yeah, you guys want to play next week? I'm like, yes, hello, and
yeah, dude.
So we played, shot the shit, talked mad shit, had a good time, and it's so very funny, like coming back to even after 6 months, the dynamics are exactly the same, and it felt good, kind of just to get back into the groove of things and show off what we've been up to and talk about what we've been up to. And yeah, different group dynamics is always interesting to navigate depending on like who you're with. Like this group was really familiar, so I could talk bad shit. And then the new play group I've been introduced to, I'm still trying to like feel the vibe and kind of how I want to interact with people. And kind of as part of that, kind of going back to the Killer Queen story with that group, we did have only time for like one more game after Killer Queen was done because that game was 2 hours long. And we played a 5-player game. And we played like a variant of 5-player where the 2 people sitting across from you from the star are your opponents, and the people who are adjacent to you are your allies. So you have to try to like have a precarious balance of trying to keep your allies alive, but not have them win because one of your opponents is also their opponent that they need for their win con. And as we were playing, we eventually kind of reached a point where one of the players who is a notorious, like he was the judge and he's like really good, but he plays much more powerful decks than we were kind of prepared for. And he's like, cool, so hey, we are playing a 5-player game. Here's my Dockside Extortionist. And we're like, oh, we're dead. We're like, do we have anything to deal with that? No. Made like 20 treasures or something like that, and then proceeded to win the next turn. But we were like trying our hardest of like trying to find ways to dealing with it. It's just unfortunately like Dockside Extortionist's value is too crazy, and the fact it was a 5-player game just added that extra wiggle room of just getting massive value. He was not there to like, he was there definitely to abuse it, but definitely not to like decks that would have had like flicker effects or reanimation or something. He was just playing Feldorn, the green, red,
Dreadwolf Herald, the Gruul Prosper.
The Gruul Prosper, yeah. So there were still, but it was just like the damage was done, and we proceeded to lose like the next turn. But it was just like, oh geez, it's Dockside is always brutal. And luckily the discussion, like I did get frustrated, but he was like, he's kind of saw the results. He's like, I think I need to tune to power my decks down for the next time, because he's like, me and my other buddies play Powerful Magic. I could tell you guys can sort of do it, But he's like, I would rather move down to where about you guys are so we can all have a good time. And I'm like, I appreciate that, and I apologize for my belly aching about Dockside Extortionist.
Oh, that's a pretty good way for everybody to handle that. That sounds like that went about as well as it could have.
Yeah. Especially with my piss poor attitude, because I was just sitting there like, no! Why?
Yeah,
I
having
fucking
such
hate
a nice
that
time,
card!
and then that damn goblin pirate comes up and fucks everything up.
It's like, I'd rather see any other goblin pirate except that guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was probably going to be a longer discussion, but I just put Dockside Extortionist in the notes, and I figured I just had to get it out.
Yeah, I feel it. There's a reason that I tweet about it every quarter.
You also had one more deck that you put together.
Yeah, I've been on a really, Universes Beyond kick. So, they had a secret lair for Doctor Who. It's got the 14th and 15th Doctors, some key characters from the specials, and one of those is the Celestial Toymaker. He's a rogue artificer, 2 power, 4 toughness for white, blue, black, and he says, whenever the Celestial Toymaker attacks, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Exile any number of them in a face-down pile and the rest in a face-up pile. Defending player chooses one of those piles, put that pile into your hand. And then at the beginning of each end step, each opponent loses 2 life for each spell or ability that caused 1 or more players to guess or group cards or permanents into a pile this turn. So gamers, they gave me a Fact or Fiction.
I was going to say, we can't trust you.
And we all know that I love the card advantage with audience participation. So naturally, I built the pile of Fact or Fictions. I also included some initiative for additional minigames.
Okay, I was hoping it wasn't there, because I clearly did not look at your list thoroughly enough to figure out. I should have known. I should have known that you were going to put that in there.
Why would I leave that out? I told you, the whole point of this card is to drag your friends with you into the minigames dimension, and the ultimate minigame in Commander these days is the initiative. So I included one of the best fucking initiative cards in the game, Seasoned Dungeoneer, who will give my attacking rogue, my commander, protection from creatures until end of turn and explores, and also she ETBs and takes the initiative. So I'm just like, I've got evasion, I've got buffing my guy, we're going to make that damage matter, we're going to play this minigame repeatedly, so we're going to deal burn damage, and then when I put all of these cards into my hand, I can find the cards that I need to accomplish my goals. One of which is to reanimate, so big chunking sphinxes and stuff are going to go in my graveyard. One of which is Unesh, Cryosphinx Sovereign.
Love that card.
Does a Fact or Fiction when he enters the battlefield, and makes every other Sphinx you play when they enter also do Fact or Fictions. And we have Sphinx of Uthun, who itself does a Fact or Fiction. And we have Sphinx of Clear Skies, who itself does a Fact or Fiction. So it's mini games all the way down, and then we're playing Reanimator. And I figured this would be the deck to get a little bit naughty, so I included a very special kind of Reanimator archetype popularized by the Legendary Creature podcast called Dance Macabre. And the game plan here is to play this sorcery, Dance Macabre. It's 3 black, and each player sacrifices a non-token creature. Roll a d20 and add the toughness of the creature you sacrifice this way. On a 1 through 14, you return a creature card put into a graveyard this way to the battlefield under your control. And on 15 plus, you return up to 2 creature cards put into graveyards onto the battlefield. Into graveyards this way onto the battlefield under your control. So I cast my Dance Macabre. I maybe sacrifice an Archaeomancer that I was using to buy back my Fact or Fictions previously. I make everybody else sacrifice a creature. I reanimate that Archaeomancer at minimum. At maximum, I'm doing that plus one of your creatures that I made you sacrifice. And then when the Archaeomancer enters the battlefield, I put the dance back in my hand. I can go even harder by playing Breach the Multiverse.
Oh, I love that card.
When that resolves, I can put Scholar of the Ages onto the battlefield, as well as other stuff. And with Scholar of the Ages, I can buy back the Breach the Multiverse, as well as one other spell. Scholar of the
You
Ages
know,
is particularly naughty, though.
I'm so glad this is an Esper deck and not your typical Grixis Mean Girls deck.
Sorry, babes, it's about to get worse.
No.
Check this out. I've included some Planeswalkers in the deck because they make piles and also they're powerful. We've got Jace, Architect of Thought, who makes a Fact or Fiction pile. We have Liliana of the Veil, whose ultimate makes piles. And Professor Onyx is in here because her Magecraft ability pays off me casting all of my Fact or Fictions by burning my opponents further. The other thing that she's going to do is be a win condition with the Scholar of the Ages here, because my secret nefarious plot is to cast a Saw in Half, targeting my Scholar of the Ages.
Stop.
That'll make some scholars that'll enter the battlefield, and I can return the Saw in Half to my hand when they enter, as well as something like Sacrifice, which says, as an additional cost to cast the spell, sacrifice a creature. Add black mana to your mana pool equal to the mana value of the creature sacrificed to cast the spell. So Sacrifice, when using Scholar of the Ages with it, will make me 7 black mana. And when I pick up the Sacrifice and the Saw in Half with the ETB of Scholar of the Ages, I still have one other Scholar that entered that I can pick up 2 more instants or sorceries with. And from there, I can loop Saw in Half and Sacrifice and whatever mill or other effects I have in my graveyard to make a bunch of black mana and scholars and pay that off with whatever I want, like casting Breach the Multiverse.
I was going to say, there's a breach in the multiverse in this loop somewhere, and that's the part where I'm like, this is busted. This is gross. This is disgusting. Please stop.
Yeah, so
I'm going to Aurelia the War Leader, and I'm putting you under arrest for crimes.
Yeah, I'm going sicko mode. So that's the game plan there. We're playing a bunch of Fact or Fictions. All of that card selection is going to help me find my combo pieces or reanimator bombs. We're going to reanimate those, and we're going to combo off with the Scholar if we get a chance.
This physically hurt me listening to all that.
It's so fucking sick, dude. You'll have to see it sometime.
I'm sure it will be a lot sooner than I wish. A lot sooner than I dare to dream. And, oh god. Yeah, no. I suppose my only last comments for this podcast before we shut everything down is I took apart 3 decks and I made 2.
I'm so proud of you. That shit's hard.
The discussions have been going on online about, taking apart your commander decks and stuff, and, I've notoriously have said I've consistently had like 50 some odd decks for like over 2 years now. And one of those things was that, you know what, I'm not a Grixis Mean Girl. So I took apart my Be'lakor deck that was all about demons and ETB triggers and stuff, and I was just like, nah, that like I haven't touched it. I don't really intend to. I don't know if I'm actually gonna do anything with this mana base, but then I'm supposed to be receiving a Goro and Satoru card from a friend of mine because we're doing some trades later this week. So maybe I'll do that. But for the meantime, I took everything apart. I took the Talisman of Indulgence out of that pile and put it into Killer Queen so I can unproxy that. So I'm like, that's some good use there. And the only other reason that I was taking this Be'lakor deck apart was because I was trying to find Dark Ritual as part of the trades. And I knew I had, I think it's the Ice Age version. And I'm like, I want to get rid of this because it's ugly, and my friend will appreciate this way more than me. And he's like, oh, hell yeah, Ice Age. I'm like, yes, perfect. And then as part of it, I was like, well, I do have this other Dark Ritual from the Warhammer 40k set, and I need to put that somewhere. And as part of that, I had 2 mono black decks. One of them was recently made. It was Shadowheart with the background Cult of the Absolute, because Baldur's Gate 3 is an amazing game. So I had to make the worst timeline version of Shadowheart. And I also had another mono black deck that was held by Kinzu of the Bleak Coven. So first of all, we'll just say it right now, Kinzu and Shadowheart definitely do pass the vibe check, but Shadowheart only does because of Cultist of the Absolute, giving her +3/+3 and flying and a bunch of stuff. So that's why. But Kinzu is 4 and a black for 5/4 Phyrexian Vampire with flying. So she go 5 to 8. Great. Hero's Blade. Check. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may pay 2 life and exile it. If you do, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's a 1/1 and has Toxic 1. And I think Kinzu's really cool. Unfortunately, my desire to actually play the deck was not so great, and I decided to take her apart and integrate her and some other cards in that pile into the Shadowheart list. And now I have a giant pile of mono-black cards, swamps and all, to reintegrate into other decks, because it turns out I had a lot of like really cool, really fun Reanimator stuff, and just a few other small things that just can be used elsewhere.
Nice.
And
time to build a new deck.
And then I built a Rabo Roar of the World today.
Hey, yo.
Finally pulled the trigger on that. I've had it in a dedicated deck box for months, and it's kind of been meant as a deck that shows my appreciation for cats, and also it you know, I've always been like, maybe my girlfriend might play it sometime. Most likely not, but just in case, here are cats. So it's got every cat, including some good old bipedal cats in there as well.
Of course. You gotta have your Johnny's Pridemates.
Yeah, but it's just your good old Silesian stuff, and I put a bit of money into it just for like the mana base and stuff, and I'm sure it'll play fine. I'll try to play it in the future, but it was just something that I'm like, I knew I had to get it done finally, and so it's finally done. I'm once again back at 50 Commander decks, and
Nice.
I might be looking at trimming down the piles a little bit more and more. A Rabo, in this case, I will say, does not pass the vibe check because he wants to give other people the vibe check from the command zone. Thank you, Eminence.
So true, bestie. What about Nazan? Does Nazan pass the vibe check?
Yeah, Nazan passes the vibe check for sure.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Fucking, swords it up. Let's go. Hammer time? Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, it's easy. So there's a lot of them in Selesnya that definitely do pass the vibe check.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's it for me, I think.
Yeah, I think we are at the end of our agenda here, so I guess it's about time to wrap things up.
New record for longest episode of this podcast. How long will we get to next time? We'll find out.
Well, we probably won't have to run through a year's worth of Magic the Gathering cards and rate our likes and favorites from that. So,
yeah, no, might as well get that done out of the way now before the actual Christmas/New Year's part happens.
Yeah.
But yeah, everyone, thanks for listening. Go check us out at our usual socials. I'm on Twitter at Uncommon CMDR MTG. You can find Quinn at Girl Dick Energy. And you can find our podcast main source on Twitter at, and maybe I should change the acronym up because as it turns out, there's a lot of people with the same acronym, HBVC_MTG on Twitter. And
hell yeah.
Yeah, there we go. That's the episode. We'll see y'all next time.
Later, gamers.